Hi, everyone. My name is Jen. I'm a consultant with Rising Tide, and today I would like to talk to you about automation, data types, APIs, and kind of go over exactly what all of that is on the day that I'm recording this. Been mulling over what I wanted to do for my new video, um, and just based on some posts that I've seen recently and some conversations I've had. I kind of want to focus this around more of a knowledge dump, um, kind of introduction to APIs and automation, and hopefully not make it this be such a big scary thing that people are afraid to try to do. Because honestly, it's not all that complicated. I know. But it's really just about understanding the process that you have to go through, understanding the inputs, understanding the outputs, what kind of data are you working with. A lot of technicians, they'll start off with something like PowerShell. Um, and, that's a great segue into it. A lot of others, they'll do Python, or you'll do JavaScript, or C sharp. It really doesn't really matter what flavor of programming that you do. It really all kind of boils down to working with the same kind of primitive data types. Um, Common data types, strings, integers, floating points, booleans, dates, times, um, APIs. You're all working with the same kind of materials, the same kind of inputs and outputs. It really doesn't matter the language that you use. Let me share my screen here. So this is a pretty good website, Geeks for Geeks, that's got a lot of really good info. And a lot of it is way more advanced than you would really need. But this is kind of what I'm saying. All these things, they all relate to the same kind of data. You have integers, all the things I listed, even things that you don't really necessarily need in the kind of industry that we work in. This is a little more advanced, unless you want to get to that advanced point, of course. Um, I'll give another example with PowerShell. So I talked about process a little bit. When you're dealing with the kinds of tools that we deal with in an MSP, hopefully what you're working with has an API. So start an API. If you don't know what an API is, it's an application programming interface. That's technically what the acronym stands for, but really it's just a service that your antivirus will provide or your PSA will provide that allows them to talk to each other. Maybe you have your PSA connected with your RMM where it creates tickets when software is out of date. In the back end, that's using its API in order to create that ticket. That's the long and short of it. It allows you to do a lot of powerful things with automation, and I'll get into that in a little bit, right? So I've been working with HaloPSA, I've worked with ConnectWise, I've worked with a lot of other MSP tools that both do and don't have APIs. And I'll be honest with you, I prefer the ones that do have APIs because you can do so much more with them. But it all boils down to no matter what you're working with, you have to start somewhere, right? You find out what that API documentation is. You figure out how to authenticate. Once you're authenticated, you look at what endpoints you have available, right? Maybe you're just getting the status of your ConnectWise, all the statuses in your Halo or ConnectWise instance. Maybe you're looking for all of your agents. Maybe you're looking for all of your tickets. Maybe you want to tie all of this together and just do something like list all of your tickets, or you want to find something particular about those tickets that you want to change or update, or you just want to report on the stuff. It really doesn't matter what really matters. It does matter what you want to do, but the basic concepts are the same. So PowerShell authentication, get what you want, do any comparisons that you need. So like Halo returns IDs a lot rather than actually listing client names or agent names. And ConnectWise is kind of the same way. You have to do the same things, and in other tools, you have to do the same things. Maybe it's just a client ID, but it doesn't give you the client name. So you have to pull all the companies and do those associations and the maps. And, you have to understand, am I looking at an object? Am I looking at an array? Am I looking at, a key value pair that I need to access certain properties for, like comparing the name to the ID, rather than just straight values, right? So in Halo, they do give you, let me actually go to this tab instead. They do give you some built-in actions that you can kind of use within their system, right? You obviously have workflows and stuff in HaloPSA, and you also have workflows in ConnectWise, although the one-to-one is a little skewed as far as actions. Halo, I think, does give you much more actions than ConnectWise. ConnectWise, though, is useful in its own way. But something that really always bothered me is that these built-in actions that these platforms give you don't necessarily always give you every single action that you can possibly get, right? So in my PowerShell example, I got the agents, I got the statuses, I got the tickets. You build that call for each endpoint to get the results for each endpoint to be able to parse through for each endpoint, do your comparisons, whatever you need to do. So the built-in actions, and this is in particular, this is the runbooks area of HaloPSA, which I don't necessarily always see a lot in a lot of the tenants that I look at. So this is one of the built-in ones, though, that Halo provides on some of the newer instances, and this is invoking a script to Ninja One, right? So what it's doing is it's creating the action. So they've created a Get Ninja One script details automation that they are letting you create. So in Halo, you create actions, you can update actions. But bringing it back to my example here, I can list the tickets here, right? I can get all the tickets, or I can get an individual ticket, create an asset, do lookups, get a user, but I can't list the statuses that I'm looking for. I can't list the agents that work for me. So in order to do that, you have to actually build in your own HaloPSI application that you then use within the custom integrations. And you come in here and you add your own little HaloPSI API, HaloPSA API, where you can then build methods in. Say, I want to do updating an invoice. You want to send emails that you can customize yourself, maybe with an email template, or maybe not with an email template. Doesn't really matter. Whatever you want to do, your imagination is really the limit when it comes to APIs and what you're able to do with those APIs and the tools that you use. If you want to do something in particular that isn't really available, then you make the suggestion that you want to do this, and most of the time they'll do it. It's kind of good. So coming back to this, getting tickets, getting the list of tickets. I can get the list of tickets here, right? Here's my list of tickets. I can assign a variable to those tickets even, right? So I'm getting an array of tickets, and I'm saying the response is the tickets. And then you test it, and now I have my tickets, right? So it's the same concept as in PowerShell. You're building that call out. You're just doing it in a different way. Same thing with Roost. Roost is another big name in the MSP space where you do things with automation and they have built-in actions. So they have something saying list tickets. So all I have to do is plop this little action down, assign it a result that I can parse through later on and say, okay, I want to test it and it's going to go through and turn green as long as I have everything set up correctly, and it's going to list my tickets and you're going to be able to see all your tickets. And you can see that it's returning an array of tickets by the little square brackets, right? So it's an array of objects that have all of the properties that you're looking for that are either integers or dates or Boolean or they're string or whatever. It doesn't really matter. You kind of get to understand after some time working with these kinds of things what things look like. You can even turn types of data into other types of data, which is called typecasting. So that can be a little hard to understand. So basically, you have an integer, right? You have 1. And when you do 1 plus 1, it's supposed to equal 2. But if that 1 is a string, it's not really going to work well. So this other website that I found, the one I mentioned before, doesn't have examples for PowerShell. But you can see, converting a string to an int or vice versa, right? You have this string, which is 1. It's a type of string. String's 1. String plus 2 is 12. So, 1 plus 2 isn't 12. It's supposed to be 3. But because it's a string, it adds them together. When I was first kind of grasping all of this stuff, and it took me a really long time to just understand the basics of all of this and get comfortable with it. It's not an easy process, but once you get there, once you get that understanding, um, it kind of just clicks for you after a while. At least that's how it was for me. And after a while, I mean like a couple years of doing this. I worked for an MSP for 11 years before joining Rising Tide. And I have to say, I probably did everything manually for at least the first 6 years that I was there, like building computers, et cetera, et cetera. It just didn't occur to me really. I wouldn't say it didn't occur to me to use PowerShell because I definitely tried, but it wasn't really clicking with me where I would build these big advanced things that you see other people build. Um, but I'd try. I would do installation scripts, silly things like that, and it helped. Uh, and then when I became, internal IT, where I was responsible for all of our tools, I had to do installations, remediations, and I started building more advanced things. Things started to click. You start to understand the types of data. You start to understand the steps that you have to go through to get all of these things to tie together. And then when AI kind of came on the scene a couple years ago, that really just kind of accelerated my learning process and understanding, because I could ask it very specific questions rather than have to try to find that information myself on the internet in like a Stack Overflow post somewhere of somebody having the exact same issue as me. I remember struggling a lot with the secure application model for Microsoft when it first came out, especially because it was all PowerShell and a lot of the modules started becoming out of date because the projects fell to the wayside or just became incompatible with each other. It was very frustrating. So the state of things now, where you have tools like HaloPSA with their integration runbooks, you have tools like Roost. Don't get me wrong, PowerShell is definitely still a powerhouse. I mean, there's so much that you can do with it. It's very versatile for one-offs. Absolutely. I would 100% write PowerShell scripts to do things, and I have. But having some sort of, low code drag and drop situation isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world either, because it takes care of things for you, like authentication. It's a lot easier to understand what you're getting in your output. It's a lot less of a hassle unless you're building into your PowerShell script your own sorts of reports, like an HTML page that you can bring up that shows your own reports, or you're building your own automation system that runs off of PowerShell. That there are absolutely wonderful projects that are built entirely on PowerShell. And I would fully support anybody using PowerShell as that gateway to understanding, because it's so prevalent in the MSP community. You're going to find a lot of resources surrounding specific things that you do in your day-to-day life, with the tools that you use every single day. That's going to give you that better understanding. If you don't know the language, but you know the product and you know what you're looking at in the product, and you can relate that to what's being returned in PowerShell or in Rewst, that really helps make the connection in your brain. So today we went over what APIs are, what the different data types are, a little bit about how you can call different endpoints using different languages, and how all of those concepts kind of relate to one another, that they are different. Each language does handle things differently. But hopefully having an understanding of how they do relate one another, and how the programs all relate into, those services, it's really going to give you a leg up to understanding on how to get into automation and start doing some of these cool things. So I hope that was helpful. I really appreciate everybody watching today, and have a great day.